At dinner, my mother-in-law snapped, "You'll start cooking at 4 a.m., do you? We have guests." My husband chimed in, "Don't mess it up this time." I agreed sweetly, but instead of chopping vegetables, I was at the airport before dawn. 30 guests walked into a house with no food waiting. 3 days ago, I was drowning in dishwater in my suburban kitchen, scrubbing pots from a dinner I just cooked for Hudson and his mom, Vivian. Her heels clicked across my hardwood floor like a judge's gavel, sharp, final, always announcing her arrival. She swept in, all designer purse and perfect hair, and dropped a bombshell. "Isabella, darling," she said, in that tone that meant she was about to ask me to do something impossible. "We need to discuss Thanksgiving." I was elbow deep in suds, hands raw from hot water, because Vivian once said rubber gloves looked unprofessional. I forced a smile. "Of course, what can I do?" She handed me a guest list. I unfolded it and my heart sank. 32 names. 32 people. I read it twice, thinking I'd miscounted. 32, I whispered. "Actually, 30, Vivian corrected, laughing like it was no big deal. "Little Timmy Sanders is only 6, so he's half a person." But plan for 30 full portions. Hudson, glued to his phone, just nodded. "You got this, babe. You always pull it off." I stared at that list, my vision blurring. For years, I'd hosted Thanksgiving for maybe 15 people, and even that was a marathon. 2 days of prep, no sleep, running between the kitchen and dining room while everyone else sipped wine and laughed. And now they wanted double that. "When did you invite all these people?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Oh, over the past few weeks," Vivian said, waving her hand like it was nothing. Then she handed me a menu. Her menu. Turkey with 3 stuffings, ham with pineapple glaze, 7 sides, 4 desserts, homemade everything. No store-bought pie crust because the Sanders from the country club deserved a certain standard. I felt the room spin. "Vivian, this is a lot for one person." She brushed me off. "Nonsense, you are perfectly capable." "Hudson will help." I looked at my husband, hoping he'd see how insane this was. He didn't even look up. "I'll carve the turkey and open wine bottles," Hardy said, like that was enough for a meal that'd take 16 hours to cook. "Start at 4 a.m., Anna," Vivian added, checking her fancy watch. "The Sanders like to eat early." That night, alone at the kitchen table, I did the math. The turkey needed 6 hours in the oven, but I'd need that oven for other dishes. The timeline was impossible. And then I noticed something else on that guest list. My name wasn't on it. I was cooking for 32 people, and I wasn't even a guest. That's when I called Hudson's cousin Ruby, who wasn't invited either. "Vivian said I'd be more comfortable at a smaller gathering," Ruby told me, her voice heavy. "Since I'm divorced now, I guess I'm too messy for her perfect dinner." That hit me hard. Ruby had been family for 8 years, but the second she wasn't useful, Vivian cut her out. I saw myself in her, one bad dinner away from being uninvited from my own life. The next morning, I was at the grocery store at 6 a.m., my cart overflowing with enough food to feed an army. The total made my hands shake as I swiped our credit card, knowing Hudson would complain about the cost later. Mrs. Suzanne, my neighbor, saw my cart and raised an eyebrow. 32 people? By yourself? I mumbled something about Hudson helping, but she just looked at me with pity. "Honey, that's not help. That's watching someone drown while standing on the dock back home." I turned our kitchen into a war zone. Ingredients everywhere, counters buried, fridge packed like a Tetris game. By noon, I'd been working 6 hours straight, no breakfast, just a handful of crackers. Hudson wandered in, still in pajamas, sipping coffee. "Wow, smells good already," he said, like I was some kind of kitchen wizard. I asked him to help stuff the turkey. He checked his watch. "Actually, I promised the guys a quick golf game. I'll be back to help tomorrow golf," on the day I was drowning in prep work. "You're like a machine with this stuff," he said as he walked out. A machine. That's what I'd become. Tireless, invisible, no feelings to hurt. That afternoon, Vivian called to check in. "Oh, and by the way, little Timmy has a severe nut allergy, so I'd need to remake 3 dishes to avoid cross-contamination." She mentioned this now, the day before, like it was no big deal. I stood in my chaotic kitchen, hands bleeding from constant washing, and felt something crack inside me. Not break, not yet, just crack, like a dam about to give way. That night, Hudson came home smelling like beer and golf course grass, cheerful from his day of freedom. I told him about the nut allergy problem. No big deal, he shrugged. Make different versions of those dishes. I snapped. Hudson, I need real help, not just carving the turkey. He looked shocked. I'd never raised my voice before. You're stressed, he said, like it was my fault. I'll help tomorrow. I've got an early meeting, though. Singapore call, time zone thing. Another thing he hadn't mentioned. I went to bed staring at the ceiling, doing the math again. 10 hours to do 20 hours of work. Impossible. And then it hit me. I'd trained them to expect this. Every time I pulled off a miracle dinner, every time I said of course to their ridiculous demands, I taught them my limits didn't matter. At 2:47 a.m., I woke up from a nightmare, running through an endless kitchen while faceless people shouted orders. I lay there listening to Hudson's breathing and thought, what if I just didn't get up? What if I let 32 people show up to an empty table? The idea was so wild I almost laughed. But then I imagined Vivian's face when she saw chaos instead of perfection, Hudson's confusion when I didn't fix everything like always. And I felt curious. I slipped downstairs, made coffee, and stared at Vivian's guest list. 32 names, all expecting me to sacrifice my sanity for their perfect holiday. On impulse, I opened a travel website. The first result stopped me cold. A last-minute Thanksgiving getaway to Hawaii, departing 4:15 a.m. Thursday. I'd always dreamed of Hawaii, but Hudson called it just beaches and tourist traps. My finger hovered over the book now button. What kind of person abandons 32 people on Thanksgiving? But another voice asked, what kind of person expects one woman to cook for 32 with no help? I thought about Ruby, uninvited for being inconvenient. I thought about Hudson dismissing my pleas for help. I thought about Vivian's last-minute allergy bombshell. And I thought about who I used to admire from I to be before I became the woman who always said yes. I clicked book now. I typed my name, just mine, on the booking form. Isabella Foster's, not Hudson's wife or Vivian's daughter-in-law, just me. The confirmation email came instantly. Flight 442 to Maui, Gate B12. I'd be over the Pacific while they were expecting me to baste a turkey. Packing was surreal. I grabbed swimsuits and sundresses Hudson always said were too casual, folded a yellow dress I hadn't worn in years. At 3 a.m., Vivian called Hudson, her voice carrying through the phone. She was worried, not about me, but about whether I'd handle the nut allergy properly. She'll manage, Hudson said. She always does. That sealed it. I zipped my suitcase, left a note on the counter. Hudson, something came up. You'll need to handle Thanksgiving. Groceries are in the fridge. Isabella, and drove to the airport. Checking in felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The gate agent, a woman my age, grinned. Escaping the family chaos for Hawaii? Smart, I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. As I boarded Flight 442, I turned my phone to airplane mode, ignoring Hudson's texts. The plane took off, and I pressed my face to the window, watching my old life vanish below the clouds. For the first time in 5 years, I was going somewhere I chose, and it felt like freedom. In Maui, I woke to waves and warm breezes, no alarm clock screaming at me to start cooking. I ordered room service, read a novel on the beach, took selfies with the sunset behind me. One photo in that yellow sundress captured me smiling. Really smiling. Not the fake one I wore for Vivian's approval. I sent it to Hudson with a message. Thanksgiving dinner in paradise. Tell Vivian the turkey's her problem now. My phone exploded with missed calls. 17 from Hudson, 8 from Vivian, texts from relatives suddenly concerned about me. I ignored them all and ordered another Mai Tai. Back home, I later learned, chaos reigned. Hudson woke to a silent kitchen, no turkey roasting, just my note. He called me, panicked, thinking it was a family emergency. When he realized I was gone, he and Vivian tried to salvage dinner, fumbling through YouTube tutorials and raw turkeys. Relatives arrived to an empty table, the Sanders left in a huff, and Vivian called it humiliating. Carmen, my sister, showed up with a casserole and a truth bomb. Isabella didn't abandon you. You abandoned her. In Hawaii, I answered one call from Hudson. "You can't just leave," he said. I told him I'd spent 37 hours prepping while he offered 1 hour of help. He was quiet, maybe realizing for the first time what I'd been carrying. "Come home," he said. "Things will be different." I wasn't sure I believed him, but I knew I wasn't going back to the same life. When I returned, Vivian confronted me, calling my actions unacceptable. I held my ground. "I'm done cooking for 32 people. If you want big dinners, hire a caterer or do it yourself." She was stunned, but I didn't back down. Hudson and I had hard talks. I told him I needed a partner, not someone who saw me as a service provider. He admitted he was scared of losing his family, of losing me. "You've been losing me for years," I said, but I held his hand. "You decide what kind of husband you want to be." A year later, Thanksgiving was different. 8 people, not 32. Everyone brought a dish. Even the kids helped. Hudson peeled sweet potatoes, smiling at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Vivian hosted her own dinner at the country club, but we were happy with our small, real celebration. I was grateful, not for being needed, but for being seen. For learning that love doesn't mean disappearing for others. It means choosing yourself, so you can choose who's worth keeping. So that's my story. If it resonates, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Hit subscribe if you want more real talk about finding your voice. Until next time, choose yourself. It's the most revolutionary thing you can do.